So welcome everybody to SWOT About Hemp. I'm one of your co-hosts, Charles Kovess. I'm a director of the Federation of International Hemp Organisations, and I'm the president of the Australian Industrial Hemp Alliance, amongst other things.
And good afternoon, morning, or evening, depending on where you are. I'm Joe Hickey. I'm the president of the Kentucky Hemp Growers Cooperative Association, and Charles and I are both members of the Federation of International Hemp Organizations that's bringing you this segment today.
So this segment is about the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats, and it's based on the wonderful report put together by Kurt Raher from Hemp Today and the Canna Markets Group, brought to you by Joseph Carringer. So this wonderful 46-page report normally costs $99 but you can have the full report for free if you subscribe to the FIHO pledge on the FIHO website, and that site is on your show notes. And that pledge is called Evolve 2033. Joe, you came up with the idea on the pledge. What is the pledge all about?
Yeah, well, the idea behind the pledge is that, we've been stuck in this chicken and egg situation for, forever. And, it's like the farmers aren't going to grow it unless the processors, process it. And the processors aren't going to do that unless they have the farmers and the market. And the market's not going to change over from their feedstock until they know that they have, the quantity, the quality, and guaranteed, supply chain. So how do we get over that? And that's what, this Evolve 33 encourages industries to sign a pledge saying that they'll use industrial hemp in their production as a production feedstock once the farmers and the processors can meet their specs and milestones. So that ends the chicken and egg scenario that we're stuck in. So, I encourage everybody to sign up to the pledge and let's get this industry started.
Beautiful. And when you sign up to the pledge, which doesn't cost you anything, it's not legally binding, it's a declaration of intent, you will get the wonderful, fully explored hemp SWOT report. But in the meantime, you can listen to Joe and me unpacking it over this short podcast so that you've got the essence of the message in this report. Now, before we do our particular exploration of the 10 recommendations, we'll explore one recommendation each week. Joe, what's been happening? What's it been exercising your mind in the hemp and cannabis space? We cover both. FIHO is focused on hemp, but we also need to understand the distinction between the elements of cannabis, because cannabis is hemp, and hemp is industrial hemp, and you can't call cannabis industrial hemp unless it's less than 1% THC.
Right. Well, what's happened, and it's kind of brought both sides together because Mitch McConnell snuck in, at the 12th hour, a amendment to that must-pass funding bill that was 3 or 4 weeks ago that had to pass, and that basically said that you couldn't have more than 4.4 milligrams of THC in any product. So it doesn't matter if it's the hemp farmers that are growing the cannabinoids, even at 0.3 is their limit. They can't concentrate that and add it to gummies or anything else, and they can't even really extract it because there's no way of extracting it without having 0.4 milligrams of THC in anything. And so it affects the farmers, and then it also affects the recreational and medical industry because now, the whole thing is just it's really upset the whole apple cart in the hemp and the marijuana, medical marijuana and recreation. part of
Yeah,
it. So
and that's probably a good thing. So 3 weeks down the track, in over the last few days, what's the conversation? Because the concept of hemp intoxicants is in fact an oxymoron. If it's
right,
hemp, it can't be an
right.
intoxicant. It can't
Well,
be intoxicant.
it's an oxymoron, but they still, people still, when they first started talking about it, I was going, this is crazy. Why would hemp's not an intoxicant? But in reality, what really is going on here is that the people that, not the farmers, but the people that are buying the biomass from the farmers are just concentrating and isolating. And when they do that, then they can get the THC at higher concentrations. So that's what Mitch McConnell thinks, because see, Mitch's whole thing when he came in and rode in on his white horse and saved the industry, back in 2014. And this was, that was 10 years after, or let's see, was it? Yeah, 10 years after we had talked to him, and he wouldn't even talk to us. He said, I can't be seen with you boys because people think I'm trying to legalize marijuana. And now, so his legacy, what his legacy wants to be is that, he helped the hemp industry come back, and he sees the cannabinoids as a loophole that the farmers have used to get around the industrial hemp industry that he dreamed of.
Mm.
But and I'm not, I was never, when I first started, I was for fiber and grain. We didn't know about cannabinoids.
Mm.
And I was never in favor of it because I said cannabinoids hijack the hemp industry. And, but now that, the farmers are making money, there's farmers here that are making good money growing for cannabinoids. And now I know one guy, he had $1.7 million worth of biomass. He doesn't know if he can sell it now or not. So, it hurts
I thought
everybody.
I thought there was a 1 year moratorium before the new
There
rules
is.
came into play.
There is. But and what most people don't understand, the farmers have to plan for growing this year. So if they don't know what's going to happen next year, they're not going to plant again in the spring
Mm.
without knowing that what's going to happen. So if those regulations, if there isn't new regulations put in before the spring, then farmers aren't going to grow it, and then it's pretty much going to be end of that industry unless, even if they change it, we're going to skip a year
Well,
because there's.
when you say the end of the industry, it's the end of the hemp intoxicants industry.
Yes. Yes. No, it does. This is not gonna, because I've had a lot of people, Charles, coming and going, man, what's the hemp industry gonna do now? It's going. This has nothing to do with the hemp industry, except for the farmers that are growing for cannabinoids. Those guys are gonna have an issue. But again, it's when I look at it, I like to see the young farmers or the struggling farmers, these rural farmers here in Kentucky, benefit from producing cannabinoids versus these mega marijuana corporations that are against. They like this bill because they've got a license. They're going to be selling high THC, at 35%, and THC. So, I
Yes.
mean, it's a ludicrous thing that we're caught in the middle of right now.
All right. Well, it will unfold as it does, but as you say, it's going to
No.
be, on balance, good for industrial hemp because it will stop people being confused.
Yes.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
we don't want confusion. We want people to clearly understand that industrial hemp is nothing to do with intoxicants.
Yeah. And it's funny how now the the marijuana folks and the hemp folks now are getting together because they want to see this 4 milligram things go away. So it's going to be interesting what happens in the next 5 or 6 months. But it sure is interesting times.
It certainly is. All right. Well, let's get into recommendation number one of the SWOT report produced by Hemp Today and the Canna Markets Group. And recommendation number one is develop unified communications. And before I do that, the one thing that's at the top of my head that I should have covered is that this week in Victoria, Australia, there is a 3-day conference called the Global Hemp Summit. It's the fourth such Global Hemp Summit. It's put on by the New South Wales Hemp Association and iHemp Victoria, two contiguous Australian states. I'm one of the speakers. You're one of the speakers, Joe, and there's over 100 people coming from around Australia and some visitors from around the world. You will be presenting via Zoom. And this conference is focused on building and construction. There is some conversation around agriculture, around growing techniques, but the main focus is on how hemp can solve magnificent ways, building problems, and also at the same time reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So that's what the conference is about. The website is globalhempsummit.au. That's what's exercising my mind amongst many other things in hemp, because you and I have so many things we could talk about that we would never get to this SWOT report. So let's go. So the recommendation is that the industry, and these are recommendations to the whole global hemp industry, and the Federation of International Hemp Organizations was established some 5 years ago to indeed create a global body to solve global problems. And this recommendation says establish a clear industry-wide messaging framework highlighting hemp's sustainability and diverse applications. This builds consumer trust and strengthens the industry's image as eco-friendly and innovative. So what the report says is we should be talking about hemp's sustainability and diverse applications. And of course, that's what this Global Hemp Summit is about, hemp's sustainability in one sense, but certainly its eco-friendly nature. Now, diverse applications, Joe. So this messaging, say, hey, hemp can do all of these things. Don't you find that people are confused because hemp can do so many things? Diverse applications, gosh, it gets complicated.
Yeah. And, I think the issue there is, what are you going to choose to do? Because what's happened, I've seen it happen over and over again, is people go into it and they don't have they're going, well, it's got 20,000 uses. So, but they don't come up with a business plan for one single use. And so, I think if anybody's thinking about getting into the industry, pick a lane and stay with it. And, to me, that's the most important thing, because if you get, if you start going sideways from your original goal, you're never going to make your original goal. And I think, when we talk about communication, Charles, it's like, what are we going to communicate? And to me, that's important, not just communicating. It's what are we going to communicate? And I think the legislative part of this thing, to me, is as important as anything, because until we get that straight, you can't really start talking about building an industry until you have all the legislation and the regulatory scheme put in place that allows the industry to grow. So that's kind of my thought on it. What do you think?
Yeah, the hemp, it is very complex and it surprises people. I remember when I first learnt about hemp, and I got involved 13 years ago, Joe, and we explored in our first show how many years you've been in this, which is, I think, is 32 years. 1993, yep. It was 1993, yes, the year, in fact, that Charlie Kirk was born. And, to some degree, people watching this podcast, I found, I have the Charles Kovess show, another show that I do. I'm up to episode 243. You never know which viewer is going to be watching this program. They don't necessarily watch the programs in sequence, as you and I don't. I watched the Joe Rogan Experience, and I haven't watched hundreds of Joe Rogan shows before I've watched a particular one. So it's really hard to know or to avoid unnecessary repetition. But I think in the world we live in today, some repetition is needed, because repetition is the key to learning. But I remember when
Yeah,
I
it's true.
first heard about hemp, I go, how do you make this T-shirt? This is a hemp. This is a hemp T-shirt with the Australian Industrial Hemp Alliance logo on it. How do you make a shirt like this out of a plant? And most people might not understand that, and certainly they don't, because I show them a hemp stalk and they go, wow, how do you do that? How can you have all these diverse applications from this wonderful plant, 20,000 of them? So, that's the challenge that we have in unified communications. The point you make is if you're going to get into hemp, don't try to do 20,000. And so from a farmer's perspective, one of the messages to farmers is before you put the seed into the ground, you need to know what you're going to be doing with that seed. Is that a fair comment?
Yep, you got to have a contract. That's what happened in 2019 here in Kentucky, well, all across the United States. These farmers were growing on spec, and when then it happened in Canada in what was it, 2000? I mean, 1998, I think, or 99. But anyway, the year before, these farmers made great money producing seed, and then all of a sudden, all these other farmers are going, "Wow, let's jump in here," and so the next year, everybody jumped in, and then they had a crash, and the same thing happened in 2019 with the farmers here. So, and I asked them, or I told them, I said, if you don't have a contract, you're going to be in trouble. So, my recommendation for any farmer is make sure that you have a legal binding contract with a reputable company before you stick one seed in the ground.
Yes, and it's like the mining industry. This industry will boom when people are not confused about what can be done in it. Number one, but number two, if you think about gold mining, diamond mining, copper, nickel, all of the materials in the ground, or indeed the critical minerals that have been in the news because China has been supplying them to America, and Australians are also suppliers to America of these critical minerals, or what used to be called rare earths, and now they've changed that because they're not rare at all. They're just in minute amounts. So it's a lot of processing to get them, out of the ground. On the offtake agreements, in the mining industry, an explorer, a prospector goes and discovers something, a little bit of gold, a little trace of gold, and then they get somebody to say, if I develop a mine on this site, will you take all the gold? And of course, all the gold buyers say, you give us 99% proof gold, we will buy it, and here's our contract. And then that contract becomes the security for the loan or the investment that is made to build the mine to extract the gold or the critical earth. And we can do the same with hemp. That's our recommendation. Know where you are going to sell your end product, correct?
Yeah, yeah. And the other recommendations, that we need to, because we look at this through the eyes of FIHO, the Federation of International Hemp Organizations, and we want to, normalize these regulations across the country. So, across the world. So what I look at is, what makes sense for, if we're going to have regulations, because I don't think farmers ought to be regulated at
No, we're
all.
not talking about regulation now. We're talking about communication. That's
I know that, but
that's
that's what I'm saying.
recommendation.
The communication we need is to explain to these people what we're going to need in order to get the industry going, and
Mm.
that's 1% of THC, which stops the farmers from having a potential crop destruction. To me, that's one of the things that part of the message that we need to get out there.
So the other message, because our time is running out, it goes so quickly. Our goal here is to have 20,
We need to
25.
have an hour, Charles.
We could go for hours, but we won't, because we know viewers and listeners' timeframes are tight.
Yeah,
So
I
one of the
agree.
clear messaging principles is to understand the distinction between hemp and cannabis, and that's a
Yeah,
crucial messaging. And even though hemp is cannabis, you can't call cannabis hemp unless it's less than 1% THC. And the example that I like to use, and you might have a different one, but this is the one I recommend, is with grapes. You know, that cannabis is treated differently to hemp, just like grapes are treated differently to wine. And there are two sets of regulations that apply to grapes. If it's just fruit, it's just the normal laws that apply to fruit. If you turn that grape into wine, you've got a whole bunch of different regulations. And so similarly with cannabis, you've got cannabis. If it's low THC, then you can call it hemp, and it's got a different set of regulations. And if it's over 1% THC, then you call it cannabis.
Yeah,
That's,
in Kentucky, we got a different one.
yep,
It's corn. If you're growing corn, that's fine, no problem at all. But you can sell that corn to the distillery, and they're going to make whiskey or rum or scotch out of that. So it's the same difference. The farmers, you shouldn't be putting these regulations on the farmers. The regulations should come after the farm gate, and not, it's. I did a thing a video out in a tobacco field, and I said, if they regulated hemp like they did tobacco, hell, this crop would have been legal years ago. But
yes.
we just have to have common sense regulatory, scheme to allow farmers to be able to do the work in this industry. Because farmers aren't going to. I wouldn't plant anything if I knew there was a chance that I was going to lose all my money because the weather got too hot and the cannabinoid, the THC content went up 2%, 2 points above where it's supposed to, and so now it's going to get destroyed. I'm not going to take that chance.
Yep.
So
That makes sense. And okay, let's finish off this. One of the messages that's in the recommendation number one is that we drive the industry's image as eco-friendly and innovative. And that's what FIHO, the Federation of International Hemp Organizations, is doing. And FIHO is also driving for this consistency in communication right around the world, because our goal here with this podcast is to drive out confusion. That's what we're hoping to do. We hope we haven't confused you. And Joe, we're
if we have, Charles, you all put something in the chat, and we'll address it. We're here to help out. We're here to try to get rid of all of the stigma and all the misunderstanding in the industry, and that's what we're here for. So send us a chat, send us an email, and we'll address it on our next podcast.
excellent. Yes, our emails are available in the show notes, so that we'd be delighted to receive any questions, comments, suggestions. All right, Joe, great to be with you. Joe Hickey, signing
Charles,
off.
it's always a pleasure. It's the favorite part of my day every other week.
Oh, you are such a convincing liar. Thank you very much. It's great to be.
And you're looking good this morning.
Thank you.
Well, thanks. I always enjoy spending time with you, Charles.